Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 125 episodes of mead making, education, information, and entertainment. More than 80 guests have stopped by the Mead House. Professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey specialists have all visited to share their knowledge. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a key holder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House. Mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 139. You know where to find us. We're on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a whole lot of other places. Hey, you know they're all listed on the front page of the website, themeadhouse.com. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers just like you, looking for a bit of inspiration. You know, we're going to talk about that here a little bit later on. Looking for a little bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we've had here at the house. Talk to us. We're on Facebook and Twitter, both at the Mead House, or you can email us at info@themeadhouse.com. Jeff and Ryan are both seated at the bar. I'm JD Webb. Hey, in this episode, Valkyrie's Horn, we're going to do a little bit of a recap. Mead fails. Hey, you know, we've all had them. We've been there and done that. Some of the best home mead makers have had them too, but how have we dealt with them? And how has it impacted us in our own little mead house? We'll share a couple of those along the way. Segment 2, hey, what's in the hopper? We're going to take it around the table. You know, the Valkyrie's Horn, the Iron Bee, a lot of the people we've talked to here of late have really brought a tremendous amount of inspiration to the home mead making cottage, for lack of a better word. And I'll tell you, I came away from Valkyrie's Horn after tasting some stuff from, Al Boyce, Kevin, Nathan, just Matt Whitey, just a whole bunch of guys there. I felt incredibly inspired. So we'll talk about what we got in the hopper and what's on the hopper list here at the Mead House. And then segment 3, Facebook friends. Of course, this is where we attempt to answer questions from our Facebook friends and Reddit friends and any other friend, actually, with no formal expertise other than what we have learned in our own little Mead House. So all that and more here at the Mead House. But first, thanks to all the Mead House key holders who help keep the Mead House podcast free. You know, you too can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts to send out to you. Get on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or just click on the link in the show notes at themeadhouse.com. And I think the show notes actually go out with the podcast. If you listen, to Podcast Addict, a lot of the apps out there, I think the show notes kind of tag right along with the audio portion of the show as well. So make sure you click on the links. What are we drinking tonight, guys? I got a list here. Ryan, I'm going to start this one out by talking about a couple of yours. When we were at Valkyrie's Horn, Ryan sent us back to the hotel with a 4-pack of some stuff that he had put together. I talked about a couple of them already. I think it was last week or the week. I think it was last week. The two that we didn't talk about was a Kettle Sour Braggot, and I believe the other one was a Sizer. Let's start with a Kettle Sour Braggot. Now, these are notes my wife took down. We both shared the contents of the bottles. The Kettle Sour, tangy, sour. viscous, thick, large head of foam that stays and stays and stays. Mild coffee aroma. That kind of came around the mid palate or so. For me, if it wasn't for the sour, maybe I just, unless it's lemonade or something along that line, I don't know. Sours, I've had a couple of sour beers, and I just, one swallow, and I just don't like them. So I'm sorry to say, Ryan, neither one of us liked the sour braggot. That being said, okay, it was only about the sour, but the rest of the flavors, I think, really shown through. So good work on that one. If you're into the kettle sour stuff, hey, that one might be for you. The Sizer. This is probably the best out of all of them. My wife really enjoyed it, Ryan. It was semi-sweet, and now these are her notes. This is right out of her mouth. Semi-sweet, tart, slight apple taste in the very beginning. It was hazy. Why is it so hazy? I told her, honey, don't worry about it. Just drink it. The front of the palate on my tongue was very sweet. Raven said she got like tart green apples around the mid palate or so. Finished very dry. It was slightly carbonated, which I thought really kind of lended to the overall tasting of it. I don't know if it was intended to be carbonated or not, Ryan. But that little bit of carbonation that was in the bottle was absolutely perfect. Was not over-carbonated, wasn't under-carbonated. It just really added another level of complexity, I think, to the aroma or to the taste, rather. Good stuff. We both really, really liked it. We found it very, very refreshing. What's in my glass tonight? Unless you want to talk about them. Talk about the kettle sour. What brought you to the kettle sour?
The kettle sour was an experiment, a pure experiment. I've done some of these freezer clean out, meads before, and this was, like a freezer clean out mead, and I decided to try to do something, just a little bit different with it. And so I took the cultures from an organic yogurt, and I let that sit on the wort. Actually, I think it was the grains. Let it sit on the grains because I had all the grains in a bag, in a grain bag, and then in I was cold steeping them, in a bucket of water. And that's the stage that I introduced those. That's the stage that I introduced the yogurt cultures and just kind of let them work for, maybe 24 hours or so.
Yeah.
And then boiled and fermented, as usual. So that was where some of that might come from. Now I did it at room temperature. So sometimes with guys kettle sour, they crank the temperatures up in the into the 90s or so.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. So this one is not. You say it's tart, but it's not super tart.
Almost like
compared to the other ones.
Yeah, not like a galvanized pipe tart type of thing, not quite that bad. Probably more sour. I would probably say more sour.
Yeah. So then what was the next one you tried?
The Sizer.
The Sizer. Yeah, that's right. Yep. You had 2 last week and this week. The Sizer, this one, I don't remember a whole lot about this one. It was probably a fresh juice buy from one of the clubs here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have my notes in front of me, but I don't remember a lot of this one. I do sometimes like to add just a little bit of carbonation to those ciders, so it doesn't surprise me that there's a little bit there. It it I do try to dry them out, so
Yeah.
you're probably getting this is probably a little a year, probably 2 years old, so you're probably getting some of the apple and the honey that are coming back and
Yeah.
and giving some of this. Those flavors that you had talked about.
Yeah, I mean, there was honey aroma on the nose, and right on the tip of the tongue. The first time you put it in, it's got this semi-sweet, not overly sweet. I mean, it was perfect. I mean, it gave you an idea that you were kind of taking a bite of an apple. Even Granny Smith, the apples have a level of sweetness to them before you get to that tartness of the apple. But Raven thought it reminded her of green apples, pretty much, and found it very refreshing. So good stuff. And the carbonation. I, I'm I would rather have a carbonated cider or sizer than not. I just think it adds that much more. Of course, I'm so used to drinking Magners. I'm spoiled rotten because that's what I try to pattern my sizers after here at the house. So, and you know what that's all about. But anyway, so what are we drinking tonight? I poured. This is from Texas Mead Works, and this is BAM. Jeff, I think you got some too, didn't
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about this a few weeks ago on the show.
Yeah, this is actually pretty good. It's a little sweet for me. This would make a nice maybe after dinner thing. I don't know because of the chili in there. I'm not sure what direction I would go to try to pair it with something after dinner, or just maybe just drink it on its own. It's sweet, very sweet up front. You get a hint of vanilla on the aroma. A little bit of the ancho chili comes through. As it's warming up, I'm starting to get more and more of the honey aroma also shining through. It's also got a very, very mild bourbon-like aroma. That may be where that vanilla and that oak that I'm smelling is coming through. Through the mid palate is where you pick up the ancho chili. And then as it finishes, that's where the cocoa to me comes in. Definitely on the tongue there. The ancho chili stays with you for a long time, though. It's not a burning chili, okay? It's not. This isn't like sucking on a habanero, okay? Or brushing your teeth with a jalapeno. All right, this is a very, very, very mild chili. Very good. I like this.
Yeah.
You had it too, right? You've had it, yeah.
Yeah, the expression on the pepper was very nice. It was almost sweet as opposed to spicy, but
Yeah.
you could, if you hadn't told me there was pepper in it, I'm not sure I would have pointed it out, but it just added a little extra something interesting to it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I don't pick it up right away. It comes more in at the mid palate or so, but it stays with you all the way to the end, and then some. And then the bourbon, the vanilla comes through right at the very top. This is good stuff from Texas Mead Works. Really good stuff. In my other fist, I'm doing Avión 44 tonight, a couple of ounces. This is one of my favorite extra añejo tequilas, and it's Reserva 44. It's 43 aged for 43 months in an oak barrel, and then they pull it out of the big barrels and age it another month in small little petite barrels, and they rotate them around in the rack out. Roasted agave on the nose. A little bit of vanilla along with the oak. Typically, they're aged in bourbon barrels they get from the U.S. That comes through very much on the nose. The taste is just wonderful. It's very rich. It's got a viscous a quality to it, kind of an oily quality to it. This is something that's definitely an after dinner thought to share with friends. This is really, and I don't use this word often, but to me, this is a very exquisite añejo tequila, extra añejo. So pick yourself up a bottle. Avión 44 Reserva. Good stuff. Jeff, what did you put in your glass tonight? Don't tell me it's Alka-Seltzer.
No. Actually, funny enough that you mentioned it. I also have a couple bottles that were courtesy of Ryan here. One of them I think you reviewed last week. It was the Coffee Braggot, and the nose is really light. And so is the coffee expression, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's some coffee expression here, but it doesn't fight the malt. It kind of complements it. They're both not terribly strong, but not weak. They're there, and they're kind of just in a nice, compatible little level. Getting a little tang of sourness on this as well, but I'm not sure where that's coming from.
More of that yogurt.
Oh, we'll get to the yogurt in a second here. Not to spoil anything. Yeah, the hops are kind of they're there, but they're not really standing out. It's a little bit subdued in that regard. But no, I'm actually really enjoying this. I think the balance is there. The carbonation level is real good, and yeah, no, this is just a really nice presentation in the coffee category that I think all three of us have struggled with a time or two here. So yeah, no, this is really nice. I'm enjoying that one. In the other glass, like I alluded to just a moment ago, I have the Kettle Sour Dark Braggot. And unlike JD, I'm going to go ahead and say that I am a big fan of this, actually. That really strong, really thick head took like we've literally been recording for about 20 minutes now, and I think I opened this about 10 minutes before the show. It's only now starting to settle out. It's really impressive, actually. The sourness is there. It is strong, but it's kind of really well balanced. It's not fighting the maltiness or the the dark grains in here. I don't tend to reach for sour beers or sour much of anything other than like JD alluded to, lemonade. But this is really well put together. I like the interplay between the sourness and some of the roasty character from those dark grains. I kind of applaud you for that idea of putting the yogurt culture in during cold steep. I think that came out with just right around the right amount of sourness that I would look for too. So yeah, no, I'm enjoying both of these a lot, Ryan.
Wow, thank you. That means a lot coming from Jeff. Not that it doesn't say anything, from you, JD, but no, okay. Jeff, thanks a lot. That I really appreciate that. The coffee one is supposed to be, very subtle. I think subtlety is a nuance that is often lost in mead making. And
well, why should we be subtle when we can hit you with a flavor hammer? Come on.
Yeah.
You're so
right. Go ahead.
I like that. I like that you're talking about you're picking up the subtle nuances and so I like that. I'll take that any day.
Yeah, and like I said, this is something that is a little bit tricky. You've got ingredients in balance that aren't fighting with each other, but they're playing real nicely together. And some people take years to figure that out. So, well done.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, it's up to you now, my friend. What did you put in your glass tonight?
So I've got 2 bottles in front of me as well. The first one is that Kettle Sour Dark. So I've got that too. I don't need to say anything more about that. Just that it's kind of it's one that I reach for fairly frequently. The second one is, now this is a Valkyrie's Horn entry that, again, I was lucky enough to bring home because the second bottle wasn't opened. And just to refresh everybody's memory, I don't know anything about these except the category they're in, and maybe something else about it. But I don't know how sweet it is. I don't know how, before I open the bottle, I don't know where it falls in the sweetness level, the strength level, the carbonation level. This one is a braggot that I am drinking. And it's a very dark braggot, the kind of a chocolate braggot. I think it was called Choco braggot. And it is very dark, very rich, very excellent mouthfeel. Pretty velvety, I'll say. And it is pretty sweet. There's a lot of honey there. So I mean, now again, a lot of my braggots go for the more subtleness of honey, or sometimes people lose the honey in my braggots fairly easily, but that's fine, because I'm brewing them mostly for me. But this one, lot of honey character there. You're not gonna mistake that this is a braggot. Anybody just pulls this bottle off the shelf. So in that way, it's good. It's got some good flavor overall. Again, I don't know how it was put together. I don't know anything about it. Chocolate braggot or Choco braggot is kind of all we know about it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some chocolate in this, some actual like cocoa nibs that were put in it, or something like that, because it's really rich, it's really full, and I don't know if he or she, whoever put this together, got this just grains, and so, but no, I enjoy drinking it, and it's one of the perks of helping with the competition is you get to bring home again some of those bottles that didn't get open. So, if this sounds like something you put together out there, well done. It's nicely put together.
Yeah, sounds good. Moving on. Here we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff. A couple of things that we're all around the table here pretty familiar with. One of them, Ryan, is mead fails. And from the show last week, the kind of funny little ditty we put at the top of the show was, I think it was Matt Whitey, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Might have been Josh too, talking about a mead fail of his. Something about smelling like grandma or something to that effect. But it kind of went beyond that. There was more to that than just Matt or Jeff or Josh or whoever it was. Ryan, you kind of headed up a panel at one day there, actually both days there. I don't remember which day this occurred on, Friday or Saturday, but it was a panel, and you guys were talking about, you kind of went around the horn with the 3 panelists about their own mead fails. So can you say something? Well, actually, why don't we play that clip first, and then we'll come back and let Ryan talk about, that particular deal, and then we'll briefly discuss some of our own mead fails. And there's a point to this whole thing. We'll get to that when we come back. So here's the cut.
What they want to know about is, Thomas, tell us about your biggest mead fail.
Let's see. There's been a few. I think Chris remembers this one. So I had just made a mead in my basement, carpeted basement, and I was following the nutrient addition. And let's just say it's a good idea to swirl your carboy before you put the addition in. It sprayed the ceiling, and the entire floor was soaked. I had to move a Gorilla rack with probably 20 carboys on it really, really quickly. That's not what I wanted to do that morning.
Steve or Steve, either of you like to chime in with a mead fail?
I think the biggest disaster I had in the basement was the first time I made a black currant mead. And it was a little more active than I anticipated, and the fermenter wasn't quite big enough, one or the other. And so there's all this purplish, stuff on the floor in the morning when I go down there, and I figure, I'll clean it all up. And the floor's still really rough. It's concrete. It wasn't carpeted. Well, come to find out that black currants have a lot of acid, and they actually etch the concrete. Not just change the color, but ate the concrete.
Steve?
Using cranberry blossom honey.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It smelled like a barnyard. It smelled worse than buckwheat honey. And I thought it was infected. And I was going to get rid of it. And I was like, wait a minute, honey doesn't get infected by itself. And I ended up making the mead anyway. It was terrible. No one wanted it. No one would drink it.
Is that what's in the bottle back there?
Yes.
Ryan, there was three of them. I don't remember their names. You probably would. And the question that you posed to them was, what were their mead fails? Now, we know that one of them, and I'm sure it was Matt Whitey, the one about Grandma, but there was a couple others as well. Do you recall?
Yeah, so to set that up, I on this show, for a couple of weeks prior to Valkyrie's Horn, I had solicited questions. I said, if there's, we've got some excellent mead makers, if there's any questions you'd like me to ask them, let us know. And some of the responses that came back were, tell us about a time when you failed. And I think that is an excellent question, and I think there might have been possibly two reasons for that question. One of them might have been, these guys are amazing mead makers. I think on the panels of the 2 days we had Matt Whitey, Carvin Wilson, Kurt Stock, Steve Piatz, Thomas Eibner, and Steve Fletty. So of those 6 guys, all 6, I think, have won National Homebrewer of the Year. And so you've got, you get a lot of firepower on there. Just also, I think some people just might have wanted that question because it kind of humanizes them.
Yeah.
There used to be a saying that you'd hear a little more frequently than I think you do now, but you'll say, hey, I put my pants on one leg at a time. It's just kind of, hey, just a normal guy, might, got to get dressed in the morning like everybody else, that kind of thing. So I think there might have been that. Let's just humanize. I think the other reason people might have wanted to ask is, hey, if what are the mistakes these guys have made so that I can avoid those? Just what is the kind of the biggest one there or something like that? A lot to learn that way too. So you heard Thomas Eibner talk about, kind of creating a volcano in a carpeted basement, and you heard Steve Piatz talk about kind of the same type of thing, and how I think he said raspberries etched the concrete. They were so acidic.
Yeah.
You know, and I've kind of mentioned too, I've pitted bottles before by leaving them soak in, before I started using, cleaning solutions, I would use baking soda. And the baking soda, if you leave your glass bottles in there too long, they'll pit the glass.
Yep.
Oh, geez.
So I've kind of experienced that too. And then Steve Fletty said cranberry honey, which is really interesting because the cranberry blossom honey that I tried from Worker Bee, which was from Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, was absolutely delicious. Just amazing honey to eat. And I think it was Aaron Martin who also made maybe a cranberry blossom braggot or something.
Yep.
And I think it was very good as well. But now Steve Fletty is, I think, the second, big time mead maker who said that he did not make a cranberry blossom mead, that, he didn't think that the cranberry blossom mead came up very well. Another guy had also said that. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe it doesn't make a good traditional, or maybe it needs something. Now, again, it was either a braggot or a hopped mead that Aaron Martin was making. So there's lots of other stuff in there, but just if you're tasting raw honey, is the cranberry, that northern Wisconsin cranberry honey is just amazing. So just kind of one of those things, I guess. It tastes great, but it can be very difficult to work with, or not necessarily give you some of the results that you might expect. So that was those. Jeff, what did you take away from some of that?
The idea of etching concrete with the I can't remember if it was blackberry or black currant. That I have never gone that far with my fails. I like to think the worst of my fails are either I was short-sighted and let my airlocks dry out, so I got something in there that made it sour, or I think my most recent fail, the one that I am regretting the most. I talked to you guys about the 20-pound strawberry mead batch.
Yeah.
There is just an off flavor in there that I'm not placing, and I did a little too much honey with that one. So it's also kind of got a cloying sweetness and a little bit of a, I was talking, I think, with Matt Whitey at Valkyrie's Horn about a couple other meads that had kind of that same character to it, where he says it's the seeds from the strawberry that are giving it that flavor, which possible. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure what to do with this now because it is so sweet and has some weird flavors to it, but I think it's going to involve some combination of blending and probably an addition of another flavor to kind of balance that out. Maybe some rhubarb, maybe some banana, maybe something a little bit more off the wall. We'll kind of see what I come up with as I play with some ideas here.
I was here again, we're talking about mead makers who are medal-winning mead makers. I mean, there's no mistaking that. And one of my biggest fails was very early on when I first started into this hobby, and it was the infamous pumpkin mead that we don't talk about.
Except we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, but we talk about it all the time. Yeah, Ryan seems to bring it up more often than not. And it started out with a good idea. Okay, I had, like everybody else, I read a bunch of recipes online, found one that I liked, and thought, okay, I went out and bought these pumpkins, regular baking pumpkins. And I don't know, I had like 25 pounds of pumpkins. What I had not considered, number one, was the displacement value of cut up baked pumpkins, okay, in a 7-gallon fermenter. Okay, 25 pounds of baked pumpkin is not going to give you 5 gallons of pumpkin mead in the end in a 7-gallon fermenter. It's just not going to happen. So that was mistake number one. So now I'm thinking, oh crap, what do I do with, what do I do with all this pumpkin in a 7-gallon fermenter? Well, I stuffed as much as I could in and tried to maximize the amount of liquid. I got it to the 5-gallon mark, which means there wasn't a whole lot of pumpkin, ultimately. But it didn't stop there. Okay, that was mistake number one. It fermented just fine. I was on top of the temperature controls back then. I mean, I was a big DIY fan. I had a very rudimentary. What's the name of that guy, Jeff? I used to talk about him very early in the early shows. The guy, that inventor. I mean, he just comes up with all kinds of weird crap. What's his name?
Rube Goldberg?
Rube Goldberg. I had this Rube Goldberg setup that worked like a charm. And so I was on top of the temperature control. Everything went fine with fermentation until I got to the racking part. And started, and I had learned that pH was like a big thing. Okay, you got to check the pH, And so near the end of fermentation, we were tasting it, checking pH, and the pH was way off. And so I was told, well, add this acid, add some more of that acid. So we did, and checked the pH, report back. Well, I did, and the pH is still haywire. So add more of this acid and a little bit of that acid. So I did. Well, what I wound up with, well, here's the thing, okay? Go find a lead pipe somewhere and stick it in your mouth and suck on it for an hour. Okay, that's what my pumpkin mead tasted like. Okay, so this stuff was the most foul. I mean, it was like licking the side of a steel door. I mean, it was just, it was awful. And of course, that fed the sewer rats through the LA River eventually as it flowed down my drain. So that was probably my biggest fail. Now, I've had a lot of little ones in between. I'm a real stickler for perfection, I guess. If it doesn't taste good, it gets chucked. I've learned a couple of lessons since then. I've been listening to Ryan. Hey, stop, don't do that. Use it in the future for a blend. Add something to it later on, maybe change the flavors. So that was, the pumpkin thing was my biggest fail. But the reason why we're talking about this, guys, I think it all boils down to one thing. Just because you fail, okay, doesn't mean you have to give up the hobby. Okay, because I know a lot of people are faced with that. They're brand new into something. It doesn't even have to be mead making. It could be photography. It could be anything. And you're not happy with the initial results, so you just quit. You just give it up. Okay, don't do that. Stick with it, because good things will come in time. The more you learn, the more you talk to people, the more you network with folks. Valkyrie's Horn, Iron Bee were probably the greatest events that I ever attended. I learned so much just by talking to people there. Got a lot of inspirations, Ryan, which kind of leads us into the segment 2 here in a bit. But your final thoughts on mead fails and what it means to you. Well, actually, did we talk about any of your mead fails?
We've got more clips, and that will play in addition in more weeks. And I don't want to call it a fail, but let's just say I'll tease out that there was one that took a lot of work to get to where I liked it.
Yeah.
A lot of post fermentation work. But I'll leave it there because that's a clip for another week.
But the bottom line, don't quit just because you have a bad experience with one project. Doesn't mean you need to give it up. And search for something else.
Well, nobody is an expert the first time they do something or the first few times they do something. And there's those old quotes, it takes, 10,000 hours or something to become an expert or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was a baseball player, and baseball is got a lot of great metaphors for life. Put it this way, in the pro level, if you lose 62 games a year, that's an unbelievable season. That means you won 100, you had 100 wins.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting out there. Baseball, those guys generally play six games a week. So you're getting out there every single day and playing. You lose, it doesn't matter. You got to play tomorrow night. One more on baseball is probably the only sport or the only activity where if you get out 7 out of every 10 times you stand at the plate, you're in the Hall of Fame. for being a career 300 hitter. Don't expect that you are going to be perfect the first time you try something or the first 10 times you try something. It's about just continually getting a little better. A good buddy of mine, decided to get really. We were competitive golfers when we were younger, and he kept on with it. And he was trying to get, I forget, but it was like 1 stroke better a week or a month or something, and he knew that realistically, if he could get 1 stroke better, every so often, he was going to make his goal of qualifying for some tournaments. And he did it, and it's about just staying on it and staying on it. He didn't go out and shoot a below par round, the first 100 times he played golf. So there you go.
Well, the next thing we want to talk about.
The Sports Corner by Ryan.
There you go. The Mead House Sports Corner. It's hanging up above the bar. The next cut we want to play is actually some guys talking about, and this is again the panel, I beg your forgiveness. I don't remember which day it was, but or even who was on the panel. But they're talking about what I got out of it, Ryan, was basically following the rules or not following the rules.
Well, let me set
you
that
could
up.
Probably, you could probably do a better
more.
job.
Yeah. So again, the panel here has, over the 2 days, 6 guys who are all 6 of the best home mead makers in the country. And one of the questions that, again, we got from our audience here was, what is being told to mead makers out there that, like, let's say on the internet, so Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, blogs, podcasts, YouTube, whatever, but where all of this information is being shared. What is what information out there is being, sold to mead makers that you wish they'd forget, or you wish would disappear from those places. We've all seen it. We've all, if you're on the Facebook pages or Reddit pages or things like that, you will see, different bits of information repeated over and over and over again. And we wanted to ask these guys, these national mead makers, what bits of that are out there they wish would disappear.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's play that cut, and then we'll come back and we'll try to expand on it just a little bit more. So here's the cut.
Thomas, what do you think is being sold as facts that you question?
Well, I think it's a little bit like what Steve was saying. I mean, it's that you have to follow certain procedures. I mean, you don't have to follow a nutrient release step. I mean, I know some of the first meats I made that won plenty of awards and was well received didn't follow any of them. I mean, I just made the meat. I let it sit. I let it sit probably more than a month on the primary. I mean, just do whatever you want to do. But I think the key is using great ingredients. Like using the right ingredients, using the right fruit, like trying to get a balance, tasting it afterwards. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that hurts a lot of the meats, there's still a strong contingent of society that, I don't want to put any chemicals in my meat. You know, those nutrients, those are chemicals. I really, sad when I hear that. It's like my retort might be, well, water is a chemical. Honey's a chemical. A lot of them. It's sad.
And we're back, Ryan. I don't know if I call it now breaking the rules or not, but before we start the show, we usually have our little rundown meeting, and I think I made the comment about, who is it that writes the rules anyway? I mean, who is it that says that you have to use XYZ nutrients at this time, at this time, at this time, and then, when the 1/3 sugar breaks, you must add another one at this time. Who wrote that rule? And where's the data, that supports that? Because I flip it over, and we've had mead makers, award-winning mead makers on the show who have nonchalantly said, oh, hell, I just added it all up front. And they make award-winning meads. So what is this all about?
Jeff, you want to start us off?
Yeah, this is my annoyance. You guys remember the whole reason I got on the show in the first place was I did an experiment with different staggered nutrient additions and different nutrient type stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen one other person try to do something similar. Nobody is doing comparative work on this. I would love to see some peer-reviewed journal articles about the efficacy of one approach versus another. As it stands right now, there are a lot of people that advocate one way or the other, but there really isn't a lot of firm data that backs up one approach or another. And to be really fair, my first experiment in this regard was a little sloppy and slapdash. It was put together to make some claims for my purposes for what I wanted to. And the amount of data that I created is not nearly large enough to be representative of a whole, but still, I want to see more data on this as far as what approach works best, because right now everybody kind of has their own horse they like to back, and I feel like we're at a point with this whole approach where everybody has their own personal preference. They see the points that they like in their own personal preference, and they kind of look past the good points of potentially other approaches and just do their own thing. There are definitely many approaches that work in this, whether it's I put everything in up front, or I split it into two, which I hear is really popular. I've heard that a lot from a lot of different guests. They'll put it in half the nutrient right up front and half the nutrient a few days later. Real general kind of slapdash approaches like that. And then there are the TOSNA approaches where it's like you quarter your nutrient additions and you put one in 24 hours after you notice airlock activity, then 48 hours, then 72 hours, then the 1/3 sugar break. I think that is a very precise. I appreciate the level of precision that attempts to employ. I'm just not sure that level of precision and that addition is necessary when we're getting good results from, hell, I put it all on up front. And I think there definitely is, at least for me, a difference in how I approach nutrient in like a hydromel versus a sack mead. I definitely take a low and slow approach to sack mead, and with a hydromel, I'm more inclined to say, well, why would I wait for a 1/3 sugar break? This is going to be done in a day and a half. So I throw everything in up front with a hydromel and just don't look past it. I forget who exactly said it, but the idea of chemicals in general being bad, that is a second equal, if not slightly greater, bugbear for me. And I'm
guilty.
And to be fair, starting out, I was kind of iffy about things like sulfites and the sorbates and shit like that. I had to come around to that, and I'm glad I did. The idea of adding nutrients, you need to add nutrients, and raisins are not nutrients. You just got to do it. You got to suck it up and do it, because the honey does not have the amount of yeast available nitrogen that your yeast are looking for. You're either going to take too long to make your mead, or you're going to stress them out and you're going to get weird off flavors. You don't want that. Honey is expensive. Just spend the $5, get some Ferment K, and use that. It's a really approachable product. I really enjoy it. I recommend it to people all the time. Start with that. If you want to go to Fermento, go for it. If you want to go DAP, and there are other products on the market as well that I don't use, but plenty of people do, and plenty of people enjoy, and plenty of people get good results with. So, at this point, we are all figuring out what works for us, and that's kind of the best we're going to get until we get some of these white papers or peer-reviewed journal articles, or some serious research in this regard. So, I'll put away my soapbox now. Let you or Ryan take it.
No, you're fine, man. I dig it, and I was guilty as hell about the chemical thing. You start reading a lot of these things online, and it's the sorbates and all these different chemicals. Like, shit, we really got to put that stuff in this mead? I got to drink this stuff? I don't know about this. So I was very hesitant about all that. Well, come to find out, all these chemicals are in everything we eat anyway. Look at the ingredient list on a can of beans that you buy out of the store. Give me a break. Beyond the beans and the salt and sugar, the rest of it are all words you can't even pronounce. So, what the hell, Ryan?
Yeah. With the first one, talking about, just kind of doing it the way you want to do it, I agree. I do a lot with, like Jeff, and then a lot of my hydromels and stuff. A lot of my meats are 1060-ish, to start. I put in all the nutrients up front, and that's it. I don't do anything, beyond that nutrient-wise.
And they come out just fine, right?
They come out just fine. Right. The other one is, like people talk about degassing. You got to degas. Well, if let's say you make your standard strength mead, you put it in a carboy, and you just kind of let it sit for a year, it's going to naturally degas on its own.
Yeah.
Now, now again, this is why people were saying, hey, we don't want to wait. Don't want to wait a year for meads. You can make meads a lot quicker. Well, sure, you can, but that doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it. Now again, I'd rather have a mead to drink in a month than a mead to drink in 12.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that if let's just say you put all your nutrients in up front, for a standard mead, and you didn't degas, and you just put it in a carboy and let it sit for a year, it would probably be, it would degas naturally, be fine. A lot of wine is done that way.
Sure.
So, you've got that. On the chemical side of things that Steve Pietz was saying, now, Steve Pietz spends a lot of time teaching and judging mead in Central and South America. And he has said that they are kind of catching up to where we are in the U.S. And so I kind of go, okay, it reminds me of maybe a few years behind, because a few years ago, especially on the wine side, I would see a lot of new winemakers, and then I did new mead makers as well, but more on the wine side, of people really scared of chemicals. I don't want to add any sulfites. I don't want to add any nutrients. I don't want to add any clarifying agents. It's all chemicals. I don't hear that as much anymore, and maybe it's because I'm not seeing the same influx of brand new mead makers and winemakers, or maybe they have just learned more and they're not worried about those types of things anymore. So either way, I think the trend is positive there. With the so that's with the chemicals and kind of that process thing, that I think, personally, I don't know if I have another one that I wish people would stop. I know for a while people, and again, this has been blown out of the water, but a lot of people were saying you can't do citrus. Like you wouldn't want to do make an orange mead or a lemon mead or something like that. And it would just be too
acidic,
too acidic, or when the pH would be off, and there'd be all kinds of problems. So I don't see people worried about that anymore. That was kind of one that was going around for a little while. I can't think of anything else that top of my head that wasn't touched on by the 6 panelists for the 2 days. I know you just played the one clip, but so far I haven't. I guess I'll stop there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bottom line is, the rules that are supposedly written out there, take the risk, just because you heard from somebody that said you must do, something like a Tosna yeast nutrient, or you need to add this chemical or that acid. Be careful. Taste it first. And if it tastes fine, then leave it alone. If it's fermenting well, if you put all your nutrients up front and you're getting a good fermentation out of it, you're hitting your marks on your hydrometer. It's a done deal. I kept thinking as you were talking, sitting here thinking, geez, now what would people think if, somebody out there who absolutely preached on using a Tosna, you must use Tosna, but what if I was using something like Kveik? Okay, because at 98 degrees, okay, on day 7, when I'm supposed to add that last bit of, after 1/3 sugar, I'm bottling that day. Okay, you get it? All right, my 1/3 sugar break was like 24 hours after I pitched the yeast. Okay, so what do you do now? So I just thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, let's get on to segment 2. What's in the hopper, guys? I thought we'd take it around the table. I came back from Valkyrie's Horn with a lot of inspiration. I mean, Kevin, I'm going to butcher your last name, dude. Mental. I don't know. You know who you are, and I love you to death, dude. You had some fantastic mead. But he has really inspired me to do something with chilies. Not particular, not one particular chili or another, just something along the chili line. Now, I have sitting in a 5-gallon carboy. I've got 5 gallons. I got better than 5 gallons. About 5.5 gallons of a semi-sweet, straight up, no nothing mead. and you know, I'm wondering whether I want to split that off into separate batches. My first inclination was to drop a bourbon soaked spiral into it, and I thought, nah, that's getting kind of old. Everybody's doing that. Let's do something different. So then I was thinking about all these scotches that Ryan's turned me on to. Some of those are damn good. And I thought, well, no, I'm getting back to the bourbon thing again. I need to do something off the wall that I haven't done yet. So I'm seriously thinking of popping a chili in there and just taste testing it as we go. My only question is, what chili do I use? That's the hard part. The other thing I got in the hopper that I just put in, you know, my wife is on this vegetable kick now. Okay, so she takes steamed vegetables in her lunch, and so we bought a bunch of frozen vegetables, and I had to make room in the freezer. So I had like 12 pounds of, oh my God, plums, peaches, mixed fruits like, you know, the blueberry, strawberry, blackberry thing. I had blueberries. I had tons of blackberries. I had raspberries. I just had a crap load of fruit that I got out, and I put in a couple of big, well, in fact, I put it in my big 5-gallon kettle, or actually my 7-gallon kettle, and just dumped it all in there and waited 2 days for it to all thaw out. Well, it went into the fermenter yesterday, along with whatever amount of water I could squeeze into the damn thing to kind of fill it up. Now, it's in a 7-gallon fermenter, all right? With the displacement, it's up to 6 gallons. So I think I'm going to wind up with about 4 when I pull the bag out. I'm guessing at that. I have no idea. I used SO4, guys. I love that yeast. Southville.
Yep, it's a great yeast.
Yep. And I was a little skeptical of it, Jeff, because my starting gravity, now I can't even be certain what the starting gravity is, because I put about 6 pounds of blackberry honey and about 5 pounds of clover honey in. All right. The reading on the hydrometer was something around 1.120. Yeah, I didn't want it sweet, overly sweet. I thought, man, that's a little high for this yeast, you know.
Pretty high.
Yeah. Well, I put two packs of SO4 in it, and I went to bed praying. I got down on my hands and knees and I prayed to God, please start, please start. Well, I got up this morning and it had a Krausen head on it like you wouldn't believe. So it's doing its thing. I'm going to drop some yeast in it here after some nutrient in it here after the show, some Fermato, and just let it rip, and see where we wind up. I don't care where it winds up. 10%. If I can get 10%, that's cool. I'll buy that. My intent is to put it in a keg and carb it up, but tasting it along the way, we'll just have to see what happens when we get there. So this is one of those deals where, like Ryan, the freezer clean out deal. Best guess where you wind up, but hey, it might taste pretty good. So that's what I got going on here. One of my to-do lists, thinking about the wintertime, Ryan, I'm thinking dark grains. I'm thinking of Braggot. I'm thinking something along the lines of a caramelized avocado honey. So I still got a little bit of that left. But I want something stout-like. And my wife digs the coffee-cocoa combination flavors and stouts. She digs the coffee flavor for sure. Guinness is absolutely her favorite. If you ever ask her what her favorite dark beer is, without hesitation, she'll tell you Guinness. So that's what I've got going here in my brew house. Ryan, what's going on in yours?
Yeah, so today I was able to put together a couple of batches, and the first one was I finally got that lavender lemon mead going. And for this one, session strength, did 6 pounds of lavender blossom honey. And this was from Bear Honey in Minnesota. They have a nice lavender blossom honey that they put out. And, so did that with lemon juice. I'm going to forget exactly how many ounces I did because I've got that in my other book, but somewhere between 20 and 30 ounces for 5 gallons, and did all my nutrients up front and my chemicals up front. Did the Fermento, and then used the Omega Lithuanian farmhouse yeast, which I've enjoyed. And so this one I think will be great. I'm gonna slightly carbonate it and serve it. No, it's one I needed to get done here. And I decided to ferment it on a oak spiral. Now I just did a half an oak spiral because now I didn't say half. I didn't break it in half. We had smaller pieces of it of sugar maple. So it's on. It's a 5 gallon batch on a 3 gallons worth of sugar maple. So not lower than what is recommended. Now some people talk about fermenting on oak and versus adding oak in secondary or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
One of the things I'll say is if you're a wine drinker, find like a wine, maybe like a Chardonnay, that's fermented in oak, and then find like a Chardonnay that's aged in oak, and you will get 2 very distinctive different wines. So again, here I was looking for I'm not looking for an oaky flavor at all, but a little bit of the tannin, a little bit of the mouthfeel. Of being fermented on oak. Now, and again, just like 60% of the amount of oak that would be recommended. So we'll see how that one turns out.
Yeah.
And going from there. The second one I put together is going to be one of my winter monsters, we're going to call it. I started out with 3.15 pounds of Maris Otter liquid malt extract. Oh, but before I get into that, I can let you know, because I usually have 2 fermenters going at a time. And I said that one of my plastic fermenters developed a crack along the seam, and I was down to 1 fermenter. Well, I'm telling you now that I got 2. I'm up to I did 2 batches today. Okay, so here's what happened.
Did the gray tape work? Did it?
I didn't do that. I brought it back to Northern Brewer. I said, hey, I got this here. Developed a leak, along the seam. This is the situation. Yeah. And they said, well, that's not supposed to happen. And they took it back to the industrial sink they've got there and filled it up. And one of the associates, brewmasters, whatever her title was, immediately identified the leak and identified a defect in the fermenter and said, oh no, this is clearly a manufacturer defect right here, because she could tell. So replaced it. Just gave me a new one. Said, here, just hope this one doesn't have a defect.
Awesome.
Here you go. thanks for that, and so
Back in business.
amazing. Yeah, amazing. First of all, just really appreciated all that work from those folks at Northern Brewer. And Northern Brewer, by the way, I know a few years ago, some people were very upset that a holding company that's owned by InBev owned Northern Brewer.
Yep.
They no longer do. They divested, I think it was 6 months or so ago.
Oh.
And so Northern Brewer is no longer owned by that holding company that owns InBev. And I mean, that upset a lot of people. And there was, a couple of manufacturers of brew kits pulled their brew kits out of Northern Brewer when that happened.
Wow.
But now it apparently is no longer an issue because they're no longer involved. So
Good.
If that's something that means anything to you, I might as well just pass along the news. But anyway, I was very happy with that. So the second one, I took 3.15 pounds of Maris Otter liquid malt extract. And I had a bunch of these malt extracts laying around that I was going to use do some different braggots with. So I did that, and that is fermenting right now. I just used some U.S. Magnum hops, so just really clean bitterness, no style to it or anything, or no flavors to it. And did that, and that's fermenting with an Irish ale yeast.
Oh. Wow.
And then what I'm going to do when that hits high Kreuzen is I'm going to add about 3 pounds of a caramelized honey. Now, have you guys used that? I know you each were lucky enough to go home with some of Jonathan Gardner Bee's Melter honey.
Yeah.
Have you guys had a chance to try that Melter honey yet? To sample it, see how it is?
Not yet.
I have tasted it. It has some weird grittiness to it that I'm a little concerned with, to be honest with you. But I'm still going to try it within like a 1 gallon braggot batch or something like that. See what happens with it.
Yeah, because I was thinking I might just use something like that and not worry about going through a caramelizing process. And so I had about 3 pounds of that. So I got the Maris Otter, then the caramelized honey or the Melter honey. And then here's where things get interesting. When I make this, a lot of these dark braggots I make, I add like toasted coconut and vanilla and that kind of stuff. Well, I've been holding on to these for a little while. I'm going to use a pound of Cascade beer candy syrups, toasted coconut, and a pound of Cascade beer candy syrups, bourbon vanilla molasses, or whatever that one's called, vanilla bourbon molasses, and see if I can get the flavors I want, the toasted coconut flavor and the vanilla flavor, and then the bourbon and molasses are great into this. So you got, again, right now the Irish ale yeast is chugging away on the Maris Otter. When that hits high Kreuzen, we'll add about 30 pounds of either like a Melter honey or a caramelized honey. And then when that hits, like re-Kreuzen or, get the high Kreuzen again, then at the end, I'm going to add, this 2 pounds of candy syrup into it. So I'll end up with, about 8 pounds of fermentables in this, 5.5 gallon batch when it's done. And I'm excited. I mean, it's a heck of a lot cleaner than adding toasted coconut, shaved coconut, and vanilla beans. So
I like that idea.
So we'll see.
I did the coconut. Yeah. I did the coconut thing one time, and it was a mess. I mean, it was a mess. And I won't do that again.
Now, what I was thinking about, JD, was just reserving. Like, I got to do the math on this. I'm kind of giving you an arbitrary, method here, but holding back, like the third of a cup or whatever you need as your priming sugar of that candy syrup, and using, let's just say a third of a cup of if that's what the formula would call for, half a cup or whatever of the, say, toasted coconut candy syrup, and using that as the priming sugar. And so I got to figure out exactly how that'd work out and what that does to the gravities and where I wanted to end up and everything else. But those are the 2 batches I got started today, and I've got about 5 or 6 more that are kind of on the top of the list here. Just looking at the ingredients and kind of how I, going through and saying, I got these grains. I've got I've got some grains. I've got some syrups, and I've got liquids, and I've got some dry stuff, and I want to use these before they get any kind of age deterioration. Yeah. So I've got those, and then that list I'll just kind of update as I keep ticking things off that list.
I like the idea of using concentrated flavors more than the one experience with the coconut was in a stout that I made, which came out pretty good. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was good. And then one other time in a kind of a tropical type deal that we did. But the problem was I had to go out and buy a big mouth bubbler in order to do it. You just can't get that much coconut down 1.25 inch hole into a glass. You understand where I'm going here?
It ain't. Yeah.
It ain't happening. Yeah. It ain't happening. All right. So I had to buy this, 7-gallon big mouth bubbler thing in order to secondary, some coconut on it, and it was a mess. It's just a mess. I mean, you got the displacement value, all this stuff, and I don't know, maybe it's my age showing through, but I just think some of these concentrated flavors anymore, Jeff, is a way to go. I think there's a lot to be said for the stuff that's coming out of Amaretti.
Totally.
Cascade Beer Candy. I mean, come on. But what's on? Well, comment about that and what's on your list.
So, I'm way behind. I've got like a half a dozen little 1-gallon batches that need bottled up and out of there, so I can get more experiments going. I've got 2 big braggot batches that I've been meaning to do for the last month, and I haven't gotten to. Like you were talking about before, there is a lot of inspiration to be had at these big competitions like the Valkyrie's Horn. Yeah. And I have a couple that are really salient in my mind right now that I need to jump on. One of them is just specifically for the holidays. We've talked about for Thanksgiving, get a pumpkin pie mead or an apple pie mead or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, this year I am doing a cranberry hydromel.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe with ginger. I'm going back and forth on whether I want to do ginger or another spice, but cranberry hydromel, nice, like really bubbly, sparkling flavor, a little tartness from that cranberry. Mm-hmm. I had a cranberry hydromel that was I can't remember if it was petulant or sparkling, but it was very pleasant. And I think I remarked in the reviews that I wanted it to be a little bit more carbonated. But yeah, just a very well carbonated little light cranberry tart kind of drink to go with my Thanksgiving dinner, served with family and friends. That sounds like it will hit the spot. I think ginger would play nice with it. Maybe a little lemon flavor with that. I'm going back and forth as to how I want to approach that, but that's definitely on the very very near to brew list.
Well, and I think that sounds good, dude. That really sounds good. Yeah.
And I think with a hydromel, I can just keep it really simple. I'm pretty sure the health food store, like 5 minutes away from me, has unsweetened cranberry juice that they just sell by the quart. And I think if I, take one of those, I'm not sure if it's a concentrate or it's a straight up juice, But you take that, you take some honey, some nutrient, and I'm probably going to use a fake yeast because I'm just loving the fake yeast for these hydromels. I think I'm in business, man. The other thing that I came away from Valkyrie's Horn with really, really strongly, I used to do a ton of metheglins, especially the flowery stuff like hibiscus. I did a lot of, but also, I was playing with some jasmine flowers, some rose, and I kind of branched away from that in the last couple of years, trying to do more fruit stuff, trying to do more braggot stuff. But when I was first starting out, those metheglins were really strong for me, and I haven't done one in quite a while. I think I need to get back to that because I was thinking about this on the way home Friday. When I was doing metheglins, I was only doing kind of a rough tea method. My ideas as far as like tinctures and secondary and things like that were still very rough, but I was coming up with really good stuff. I would love to take another stab at that. And, it also occurred to me that there is a recipe for something like a nutmeg mead. Excuse me.
Nutmeg mead. Yeah.
Yeah, in Ken Schramm's book that I kind of want to dust off and play with as well. Getting further into the metheglins, the herbs and the spices, and especially the floral stuff again.
What was that hibiscus thing? Who had that hibiscus? Something.
Yeah, it was a hibiscus chamomile.
Yeah, but there was something else in it. Who had that? Was that Al?
Al had a hibiscus and rosemary. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God.
So
dude.
good.
Yeah, the
and
rosemary
again,
is unbelievable. Oh my God, yes.
And thank you, Al, again for going through your process very detailed. I would not have thought to do a rosemary tincture, but that is another thing that's kind of competing with me, like flavor wise, with that cranberry rosemary. Or again, we've got this lavender blossom honey, lavender and rosemary. Sounds like a great winner too. That's a little bit more off the wall than lavender and lemon. So yeah, I'm playing with a lot of flavor ideas that I want to approach this winter with.
If you're a listener listening to the show right now, by God, I hope you're taking notes. Oh my God. Yeah, that thing that Al made, that rosemary. I mean, I would never have connected hibiscus and rosemary. Never in a million years. Never. Okay, but that mead that he had, oh my God, dude.
They played so nicely together, and I pretty much have to make a gallon for my wife. I just need to.
That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then he also had this raspberry thing that was like, it was a black raspberry, and I don't remember what else it was in it. Al, I know you listen to the show, guy. Get a hold of me, email me, do something, call me. I need to know about that raspberry thing you had at the after party. There was something else in it. It was black raspberry and something else. It was just unbelievable. And I think I've made the comment before, maybe on the last show. Some of the best tasting meads that I have ever had have come from the two competitions that I've been involved with, Iron Bee and Valkyrie's Horn. I mean, bar none. Better than a lot of the things that I've had off the shelf that I can get at Total Wine. Just some unbelievable stuff being put together out there by home mead makers. Okay. These guys put their heart and soul into it. We had a good tasting of it after the after parties, Ryan, on both nights. Just some unbelievable stuff.
Absolutely. So many great meads. I'd love to get a couple of those home mead makers, join us on the show and talk about some of the things they did. I mean, we tried such a wide variety from, we've talked about melomels and capsamels and braggots and historicals and fruit and spice and metheglins. And I mean, every style was so well represented.
Yeah.
And I, we'd love to bring you some of those crafters, meat crafters, onto the show to talk about their creation. So, I left very inspired as well, and just need to get going, need to get working through the list here.
Yep.
And I've been doing, like I said, I've started now getting through that backlog, and I hope to do that pretty expeditiously.
I feel invigorated, envinegared. How do you say that?
Vinegared, invigorated,
something like that. Oh my God, that's between the BAM and the Evian 44 that I'm drinking tonight. Yeah, absolutely. I really do. And I'm sitting there. I mean, I want to do something with that semi-sweet mead that I got sitting here in the carboy. I mean, it's ready to have something put into it. I'm thinking some kind of chili pepper, some mild after, as long as it comes in after kind of an afterthought. I really enjoyed some of the pepper meads that I had at Valkyrie's Horn. We got a few minutes left, guys. Maybe time enough for a couple of Facebook friends, Reddit friends. Let's tackle a couple of those. Jeff, let's send it your way. Have you got a couple of questions being asked by some of our Reddit friends out there at all?
Sure. Let me pull one of these up here. So this one is from Australian Wedgetail. These are Australian Wedgetail. It says, "Hey all, I have 4 5-liter glass Dammy Johns of traditional spiced mead ready for bottling. The only problem is they're still very cloudy. Now, I did add bentonite to them a couple weeks ago. It did sweet bugger all. I do have a pack of that Turbo Clar 24 I could use, but I'm still pretty sure it's for a 25-liter batch. Any suggestions? I can't really cold crash because the fridge is absolutely chockers full. I have a little bottle of pectic enzyme liquid, but you only use that for melon moulds, etc. Right? These are wedding gifts. I'm trying to get them as clear as possible ASAP. Thanks in advance." So I gather you're asking the question is from Australia as opposed to the U.S. I don't know what products are necessarily available there, but as far as clearing goes, if Cold Crash is not available, what do you guys think as far as products to recommend?
The 2-stage is what I typically use. Was it Kersasol and what's the other one?
Chittisan.
The Chittisan.
Yeah, Chittisan. Yeah, the 2-stage. That seems to work really well for me. But then on the other hand, it also depends on what his mead was made with. Some are just more difficult to clear than others. Did he put the bentonite in during fermentation? That's when I usually put it in. I have great luck. In fact, we had a guest on our show who does that. Uses bentonite up front in fermentation. The hot water goes in, a couple of tablespoons of bentonite, stir it up real good, and then throw your must in. That's worked real well for me. So, Ryan, what's your thoughts on that?
I'll go the other direction. Because I don't know. I know that sometimes the things that we talk about that are readily available here are not readily available in other countries. I think it's even in Australia. Some folks have a really hard time getting some of the yeast nutrients that we might take for granted. So I'll go low tech on this one and say gelatin. Powdered, just your powdered gelatin
unflavored, right?
Is a great, unflavored, unflavored gelatin. I mean, I suppose it's a little bit different if you used, like
raspberry,
key lime, yeah. But no, just get your unflavored Knox, Knox brand here in the U.S. But whatever, similar to that. Gelatin, and that can do a pretty good job of pulling stuff out of out of suspension as it falls. And I've done that a couple of times. So that's a good one. You do need, I think it's protein. I'm not, man, I'm just kind of blanking on this now. I think for the gelatin to be most effective, there needs to be some sort of protein in there. But don't quote me because now I might be getting that confused. But low tech. I'm thinking low tech like that as well. A buddy of mine. We're going back now 10 plus years ago. When a Mr. guy was, he was the first one to get something bigger than a Mr. Beer, and he was making beer in carboys. Mm-hmm. He did the old egg white. So he would, because that's what you did. You took egg whites, and I guess you used the yolks in a brioche or something. But you just drop the egg white in, and the egg white would fall down and just take everything with it. I have not done that one personally, but there's a lot of people I know that used to. So anyway, there's a couple of low tech methods depending on what might be easy or hard to find in your neck of the woods.
Good stuff. Yeah, egg whites. I've heard of that too. Never tried it. I've been a little leery of it. But Jeff, you got another one, or what's your thoughts on it?
I've heard of the egg whites as well. I'm gonna have to try that at some point. I have no idea when I'm gonna try that.
I try it on a 1 gallon. Yeah.
Maybe just a 1 gallon basic traditional wildflower, nothing special. See what happens.
Well, how many eggs? Like a dozen eggs, a half a dozen, 1 egg? I mean, what is
I mean, it seems like whatever's left over from brunch, right?
Yeah. All right, we're getting carried away. Anyway, continue on, please.
So the other thing I'll add to this is if you can source gelatin, I forget exactly which one it is, but it is one of the ionically sourced or ionically charged.
Knox gelatin.
Well, we have no idea what variety of gelatin is available in Australia.
That's true.
So if you can find gelatin, it is one of the ionically charged finding agents. It is the opposite of Kieselsaal, which is the first of the 2 ingredients in the dual stage that JD was talking about. It used to be called Super Clear, and now it's called, I think, Dual Fine. So if you can find Kieselsaal and you have gelatin, you've got a 2-stage finding agent that's going to clear everything real nicely. I don't know how available Kieselsaal or chitosan would be in foreign markets again, but I would try to source those because those are great. The only thing that I will say in a negative about gelatin is that it does have a slight tendency to remove some tannin flavor from the mead, and I've used that to kind of calm down a mead that I thought was a little over oaked previously to good effect. But, you could go in the wrong direction with that and kind of just turn out a flabby, uninteresting mead in doing so. Not that it's taking a lot out, but it's taking a little out. That said, let's see. Ryan, do you have a Facebook friends for us?
Yeah, I've got one here that...
one more.
We'll start here, yeah. This is from Arthur. Arthur says, I'm a port maker. Most of my friends and family say it's better than store-bought port. My favorite
Send
is
us a bottle,
cherry.
too.
Yeah, send us a bottle, P.O. Box.
Yeah. My favorite is cherry made with honey instead of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I also add a quart of maple syrup and use whiskey instead of brandy.
Oh, yeah.
I like it.
My project now is a coffee port. 2 pounds of fresh ground coffee beans soaked in 2 gallons of hot water for 24 hours, strained and topped up with 2 gallons, and add 3 pounds of honey and wine yeast. Bubbling away for the last 5 days now. Most of my ports are around 20% and don't last long. Anyone else tried coffee? So JD, you are our port our port guy. Have you ever tried making a coffee kind of port?
No, but I have had ports that have had some coffee nuances in it. Now, the one thing that kind of scares me is the hot water in a coffee. I would have done at least a cold brew. In fact, I probably wouldn't have done that. I would probably have used coffee beans, one during fermentation, but you got to taste it as you go. When you get to that coffee level that you like, pull them out. And then same thing in secondary. I would have added coffee beans at that point, pull them out when you think you have what you're looking for. The heating the coffee does one thing. It creates a lot of bitterness. Okay. I mean, drink a cold brew cup of coffee with nothing in it, just straight cold brew, and then drink a cup of hot brewed coffee. There's a very distinctive difference. One is going to be very bitter. The other one is not. And that would be my 2 cents on that, but I like the direction he's going. Gives me reason to, I do have the ingredients to do another port project. Coffee might go on my ingredient list as an adjunct for another port meat project. So yeah, good stuff. I like it.
You know, he's talking about his favorite was cherry.
Yeah. Oh,
so making like a cherry mel and then kind of making it into a port. Cherry goes well with a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Cherry, I really enjoy. I think you guys got a bottle of it a while back of my cherry stout.
Yes.
I've also made cherry wheat beers and braggots.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate and cherry goes well together. One of the better coffees I had recently. Now, when you roast a coffee bean, it's kind of like roasting barley. You can, depending on how you roast it, you get all these different flavors.
Right.
And there was a coffee that had just bursting with cherry flavor. And again, it's not flavored. This is just the way that it was roasted. And then the resulting coffee had this big fruity cherry flavor to it. It got me thinking here about, adding, cherry. If I was going to do a coffee port, I'd want a lot of cherry in it too, like a cherry coffee port.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. That absolutely sounds good.
Yeah, I'll second that. Cherry coffee coffee port sounds amazing.
Yeah. All right, guys, we need to leave it right there. That brings us to the end of the Mead House, episode 139. Hey, thanks for listening and hanging out with us, but don't forget, let us know what you're brewing. We might even give you a call. Email us, info@themeadhouse.com, or just send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, both at The Mead House. Hey, in the meantime, happy mead making. That's it for this episode. Ryan, flip those lights off, Jim. Is anybody here named Jim? All right, I need to put the Avalon 44 away. All right, hey, in the meantime,
cut him off.
Yeah, in the meantime, Ryan, shut the lights off. Jeff, slam the doors shut. Hey, we'll be back next week with episode 140 of The Mead House. Hey, we're gone.